Hi, today is quite a special day because I'm here today with Linden, and for those of you who might not know Linden yet, she was one of the first people who came into contact with NLP when Richard Bandler and John Grinder started out with NLP in a quite still small circles, seminars of only 50 people by the time. Anne was one of the first people who got involved into NLP and started working with it. Now, Anne, I know that before you started with NLP, you were working in the field of psychotherapy. And could you tell us something about how your transition was from psychotherapy towards NLP?
Well, I was an actor for a long time, and then I decided I needed to make a little bit of a steadier income, so to speak. And so I decided to become a psychotherapist and went back to university. And in the course of studying therapy, different models, I would go to a lot of conferences where workshops on Gestalt, on transactional analysis, and I was actually in training in transactional analysis. And so in the course of my discoveries of all different models, that's not really the question yet. But anyway, I came into contact with Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And the thing that intrigued me about not only using NLP in therapy, but then beginning to get into teaching it. Mm-hmm. That was your question, right? Sort of?
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
Tell me what your question was again.
The question was, how was the transition for you from first doing the psychotherapy with psychoanalytics,
right,
and then moving into NLP?
NLP,
so
okay.
What was also the difference for you
between
the two?
Okay. The difference was that I loved transactional analysis because the whole premise is I'm okay, you're okay. And I really liked that non-judgmental position. But I didn't learn how to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, I really loved the idea. It really resonated with me, but I didn't know how to do it. So when I first met John and Richard and, found their seminars and workshops, I realized that this model can teach you how to do non-judgmental, can teach you how I'm okay, you're okay. How do I do that with somebody else? And that really got me hooked.
Yeah, definitely. So it was before when you started with, for example, psychoanalysis. Okay. I'll start again. So when you started with psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, it was more about the what, the theoretical part, which was really interesting. The why more, which was really interesting, but it didn't give you any practical handles about how to do it yet.
No.
And what was it about NLP for you that did give you these practical handles?
Well, first of all, the principles of NLP, which you call sometimes the NLP assumptions, mm-hmm, that all came from what I discovered later, Milton Erickson. But the focus on what you see, what you hear, learning to break that down into real specificity. Like I see that your head is nodding. I see that your skin color is a certain way, and that kind of training of the mind. And then, like, I'm sure you're familiar with the exercise, I've talked about it, somebody thinks of somebody they trust and somebody they don't trust, and they think of that person, and you look at them and you observe them for changes, and then they think about somebody they do trust, and you look at them the same way, and then they just think of one of those people and you should be able to tell who they're thinking or which one they're thinking about.
Yeah.
Not that NLP teaches you how to mind read, but what it does is it takes away the interpretation. And when I don't interpret, I don't judge. Mm-hmm. And I'm closer to being able to accept.
Yeah.
Accept the other person where they're at.
Yeah.
And be like a fair witness.
Mm-hmm.
Be very much there with them, but accept whatever's going on with them. Mm-hmm. And that I really liked.
Yeah.
That I really
definitely.
liked.
Really the training, the sensory awareness of seeing another person and then being able to, without judgment, without immediately saying, okay, you are this or that, or you feel this or that, you do get a sense of what they are experiencing, and you can test.
Well, it's not so much what they're experiencing, but that there are changes.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't allow me to mind read,
Mm-hmm.
but it even makes your intuition better, because it teaches you, okay, this idea I have of you because of whatever you're doing or whatever, it's coming from me. Mm-hmm. It's a great tool, but it teaches me, okay, it's coming from you, check it out with the other person.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that's one of the most valuable tools probably that NLP has to offer, especially when you're beginning. You learn that and you keep building on those basic principles. I'm also curious, how did lessons like these impact your personal life? So probably, as a professional, you had a lot of benefit for that in coaching and therapy. Did it also benefit you in a more personal way in your own life?
It benefited me a lot with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 children, and it really helped me to separate their behavior from who they are. So I can be impatient, I can be explosive, and so they would do something really irritating, like kids do, and then when I learned NLP, I really learned how to separate, okay, here's the behavior, here's the person. And even if when I don't like the behavior and I can say it, I don't like that, it's, please stop it, or stop it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the person. I mean, when you do that, you can't say, you lousy kid or something, because, here's the person, here's the child, and here's the behavior.
Yeah.
And you have a right to not like the behavior, and it's useful. It's very useful for a child to learn what's inappropriate behavior and appropriate behavior without being put down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of people probably, and you also come across a lot of people when they're grown-ups, they still have, of course, memories of back in the day. And I think a lot of times those identities are actually put there because of things parents said at a certain point.
And it's not that most parents are not bad people, not at all, but they get impatient or they say something a certain way, and it's not abusive, but different children take it differently, and some children will take that and it becomes part of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it can haunt you for quite a while.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And you also mentioned you worked with John Grinder, you worked with Richard Bender. Mm-hmm. I know that you've also worked for quite a while with Milton Erickson, who is considered to be kind of the grandfather of NLP, because eventually almost everything in NLP at a certain point stems from Milton Erickson.
Yes, it does.
So I'm really curious, how was it for you to work with such a legend?
Well, he was a magical person. I mean, he had these eyes that you just looked into you and saw exactly who you are, with no judgment. I mean, this man was incredible. And he was also, he really, really felt like mistakes were opportunity. I mean, he literally told us once, he said, I love it when something I do doesn't work. And he meant it. And because I learned from that. And that was, I was young in terms of experience, a psychotherapist then. And I loved that. But I didn't know how to do it. I mean, I really wanted to feel that way, but mistakes. So NLP eventually, in my training in NLP and my experience, helped me to be able to do that. And I can do that now very well, but that was many years ago. So I had a long time in practice. But he was incredible. He really was. But he was also, he could be very annoying. Because he would never answer you directly. He would always tell you a story. He told long, boring stories, so everybody went into trance. But everybody that saw him, worked with him, sent other people back to him, even though sometimes, you would ask somebody, well, how was it? Well, we sat with this old man in a wheelchair and he told us long, boring stories. But then they would send their friends to him. So,
what makes it that even though they found the experience boring, they still sent their friends? Do you know what was the specific
Because
thing?
he moved them unconsciously.
And they still recognized that.
And he was never judgmental with his students or clients. There was such a deep acceptance. I mean, when he said, I love it when what I do doesn't work, he meant it. So he was magical. I learned a lot, even though it was years before I knew what I learned. Because, all he had to do was say about 5 words, and you would go into trance.
Wow.
But I think anybody who had the opportunity to be around him for a little while, he had an impact on your life. Really did.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it's also quite magical that what you say is you experienced how Milton Erickson was and how he worked, but you didn't really learn exactly how to do it until NLP really came into existence. And it's also, it is actually the basis of NLP. They say Milton Erickson was one of
let's say that Milton Erickson is the ancestor of NLP. And all the basic assumptions or principles, whatever you want to call them, come from Dr. Erickson except for one. And you know what that one is.
We talked about it yesterday. It kind of slipped my mind.
Did I put you on the spot? The map is not the territory. That comes from Kurbitsky. So, but everything else, the meaning of your communication is the response you get. There's a positive purpose behind every behavior. They all come from Uncle Milton.
All from just one person. And then that's also the interesting part. A lot of people were in the time trying to figure out what it is that Dr. Milton Erickson did. But I know that a lot of people, even though everyone experienced it, they still couldn't get a grasp of what it is exactly. And then what do you think that Bandler and Gintler found out that made them being able to actually discover and put into a model?
They, because of who they were, they observed him, and the question in their mind was always, how is Dr. Milton doing this? Dr. Erickson did this. How was he communicating with people? how did he approach change? What did he do? Never why.
Mm-hmm.
I told you about Virginia Satir. They actually, she was the first one that they modeled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they observed her, and she observed her working with families, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 members of the same family, and they observed that she was able to get rapport with each member of the family, even though they were fighting among themselves, and maybe they didn't like to be in therapy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She managed to get rapport with each one of them.
Yeah.
And they went, how is this possible? And so they listened, and they were very, very good. John was a linguist professor, so he was really good with language. Richard was brilliant with identifying patterns. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they began to hear that when the member of the one member of the family would use visual type of words, she would too. Mm-hmm. And auditory and kinesthetic. So, and then they observed over time that this was a pattern with her. She really could shift from, if the person was oriented more visually or auditorily or kinesthetically, she would change her language to match them. And that's how they discovered what they called representational systems. Yep. I mean, she was doing it all the time. Mm-hmm. But they identified the pattern and gave it a name, and then how to use it. Well, she was using it too, but she wasn't aware of this.
Yeah, exactly.
She just did this unconsciously.
Yeah, exactly. And they put it in a model, and they started teaching other people how to do the same. Yep. And actually the same pattern they also used for Milton Erickson, and later for a lot of other people. Right. To model them. Yep. Yeah. And you've also done some contributions to the field of NLP. For example, your boundaries model is one of your own, maybe I could say
yes, invention. It's my own invention, but it's not part of NLP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so
it's separate. I certainly used my mind that was trained by NLP, mm-hmm. And some of my NLP skills in terms of how to think to create that model and how to use it, and then I wrote a book about it. But other models within NLP that I did create was like sorting by other, fair witness, spatial reframe. What else? There's a few others I can't remember.
Yeah. And I think especially the sorting by other concept, it's something that NLP practitioners, they learn quite early on, and it's really an important subject that a lot of NLP principles and skills involve the sorting by other principle. So I'm curious, exactly that principle. How did you came to discover about it?
Well, I hope you're right that people who study NLP learn sorting by other early.
It should be. Yeah.
How I discovered it was I've had the New York Training Institute for NLP since 1979. And I was teaching practitioner and master practitioner, I guess, starting in 1980. So after maybe 3 or 4 years of teaching practitioner, I noticed something weird in my students, that there were people who could backtrack really well, match posture, match voice, do all the, match the representational systems like we were just talking about. All the tools that are important for creating rapport, creating a sense of a safe environment. They really were good at it, but people they worked with were not really comfortable with them. Like I noticed they wouldn't want to work with them again. And then I watched people who, yes, they did some of the tools, but they weren't great at it, yet people really felt safe with them. And I began to ask myself, okay, what's the difference here? How is this possible that this is happening? And I began to realize that the people who really got good rapport made a person feel safe with them so that people would want to come back and work with them some more. Those people, not only their attention was on the other person, but it seemed to me their intention was, and I put the words to it, the benefit of others. And as I continued to observe and test this out, I realized it was really important because sorting by other is putting your attention on the other, and your intention, even when you're selling something, no matter what you're doing, your intention is the benefit of the other. I mean, I know it sounds strange, but this works even for salespeople.
Yeah,
it really
definitely.
does.
I definitely experienced that. I am also a salesperson.
Okay.
It's definitely, if you think about the benefit of the other person, not only communicate it, but also think about it and go find out for yourself, okay, what is actually the thing that would benefit the other person? I think that they feel it.
Oh, yeah. Well, selling is developing a relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe not on the internet, but I don't know. That's something else. But the distinction between sorting by self, where your intention is the benefit of others, and did I say sorting by self? Did I? I don't know. Sorting by other. Your intention is the other's benefit, and sorting by self, your attention is on you, yourself, and what benefits you. And each one is important to do.
Yeah.
Because it's really important sometimes to pay attention to you and what's important to you, what you want, what's important. You need that.
Yeah, definitely. Else you lose yourself in the benefit of the others. Yeah, so the actual benefit is to be able to switch between the two.
Yes, to know what you're doing, doing,
awareness.
And go, okay, is it useful now to be doing this, or is it useful for me to be doing the other?
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, what do you think is the impact, or what could be the benefit for young people to learn NLP?
I've always thought and wished that NLP could be taught to 8-year-olds and on up. I'm not into teaching kids.
For yourself?
No, for me.
Yeah.
And I think, especially here, it seems to me that more people who are teaching really young people are bringing some NLP into it. And I think it's important because most of us spend our lives learning things and putting content into our mind, but never learning how to think. And NLP teaches you how to think, teaches you that you make images, that you talk to yourself, that you have sensations in your body and these result in emotions. I think it'd be wonderful if kids realize that and could become aware of some of the images they make or how they talk to themselves, so that sometimes they might want to change that a little bit and teach them how to make an image bigger or sparkling or whatever, and also nobody teaches us how to communicate. We can speak the same language. It doesn't mean we understand anything that each other is saying. So to teach kids about that, to teach kids that it's possible different people give different meanings to the same word.
Yeah.
And, you know, what that results in, the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And maybe what you can do to change that a little bit. I mean, not teach them to be therapists or, you know, practitioners, but just how can it impact their relationship with themselves and just that, and communication with other people. Just those two things.
Exactly. I think it would greatly benefit their personal life, because indeed in school they get taught a lot of different subjects, which can be good, but something like NLP, communication skills, and also learning how to think, as you mentioned, that would really help them in all the other subjects.
Definitely.
And everything, every path or every decision they make later on, they will learn it more quickly and easier.
Yeah,
definitely. All right, we have 5 minutes before the rest of your training.
Before everybody comes in, huh? Okay.
Exactly. So I want to thank you very much for doing this interview.
No, you're welcome.
It's also for me. I get new insights from it, and I hope and I trust that most viewers will also get some new insights, some insight into what NLP is, and also something about the history of NLP. So thank you for the interview, and
you're welcome. You're welcome, Pim. It's been nice to get to know you
definitely.
In the training, and now more this.
Also here.
Yeah,
definitely. I agree.
Take care.
Yes.